growth projections, a cost analysis and comparison, the impact that Hurricane Ian had on the school and the community. We'll also be sharing the engagement that we had with the community, at the ad hoc community that we met with, as well as potential future considerations. And again, want to thank the community and the ad hoc specifically for their engagement, and as we presented and worked through the possible considerations. As previously been shared in presentations, you see here the slide before you, the enrollment capacity and the capacity of the school as well as the enrollment over the last 20 years. You see the decline that we have shared in previous slides, where currently I believe 52 is the number that currently is the enrollment. And I know that fluctuates each week, but about 52 students at Fort Myers Beach Elementary currently at San Carlos Park. We've previously shared the growth projections from historical context of what the counts were, but really moving forward the projected residents and students. And you'll hear a little bit more around some additional considerations that were shared through the ad hoc that Mr. Wagner will share as well, around some pieces specifically related to potential enrollment and those impacts. We've shared the cost analysis and comparison. This slide again shares the differential and the difference of not only Fort Myers Beach expenses, the cost of operating the school, and the revenue generated. And you can see from 2018 to the current year, that differential to the current years to the excess of $1.3 million in excess to what the school generates through full-time equivalent, what we call FTE. Funding, and you'll see that difference that has been, again, previously shared, but just wanted to elevate that and bring that back to this presentation as well. The cost analysis comparison further just shares, we did a comparison not only from the district average, which is roughly about $8,800, and then we identified the Barrier Island schools and what that cost is. That is per student expenditure per cost, and you'll see those elevated costs identified with Pine Island, the Sanibel School, as well as Fort Myers Beach Elementary, just again to have that, just sharing the facts as it relates to the work that has been we worked through. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Wagner, who's going to share, again, the impact, some additional information on our ad hoc conversations that we've had with the community, and future considerations for Fort Myers Beach. Jeff.
Thank you, Mr. Ramirez. I will keep my comments regarding the impact of Hurricane Ian brief. We're all well aware that this school took significant damage. Assessments have determined that all contents and systems associated with these buildings would need to be replaced, far exceeding the 50% replacement value. We have had an assessment done that has indicated that the buildings are structurally sound, which has led us to informed some of the decisions that we have in front of us here today. Following our original presentation on December 12th, 2020, we were directed to engage the community in further options. So just to recall, what we did on December 12th is presented 4 options that represented a broad spectrum of possibilities. The intent of presenting those options was to receive your feedback and direction and narrow our work. And the direction that we received was, please engage the community in meaningful conversations about what they would like to see happen, and further develop the options and return them to the committee, or the board rather. So today we will be returning those to you. We met a number of times with the ad hoc committee and had spirited conversations. Obviously, the community is extremely passionate, and we appreciated that passion and heard their concerns. We believe that options B and C represent options that address their concerns to varying degrees. In addition, the committee expressed concern about the demographic numbers, the declining enrollment, and indicated that they would like to meet with our demographer. So we did arrange a meeting on February 1st with Davis Demographics, who is our demographer of record for the district. That was a insightful meeting in which the community was able to present new information to the demographer about future development on the beach, and the community was also able to receive information about how the demographer came to his numbers. So we had a conversation that was approximately an hour, hour and a half long. The community then proactively took initiative to develop some projections based on that information. And I think that shows a willingness of the community to first recognize that demographics, enrollment is a concern, but they are willing to work in creative ways to help us solve that concern. And I won't steal any of their thunder and get into the specific numbers associated with that, but I do think that it is representative of the community's interest in working with us to find solutions. Today, I'll review three options, essentially option A, B, and C, not to be confused with the nomenclature used in the previous presentation. They have been modified. So we have brought back three options, narrowed down and refined around the conversations we had with the ad hoc committee, as well as additional conversations and input we've had from other sources. Option A is similar to what option A was on December 12th, to restore the historic building and stabilize the campus. Essentially, in this option, we would be restoring the historic building, removing the outlying buildings, performing site cleanup, and maintaining that campus with the readiness to open, pending an interlocal agreement that had enrollment thresholds involved in it. During that process, students would be relocated to neighboring schools with an enrollment preference. The estimated cost to complete this work is approximately $4.6 million. At this time, I'll update you that immediately following the December 12th meeting, we took action to remediate the building. Many of you have had an opportunity to tour the building. So we did engage a remediation contractor, remediated the building. I'm happy to report that as of earlier this week, they were in the process of restoring permanent power so that we could maintain that interior environment. And further work on building 2, or the historic building on site, is pending a final decision from the board. So we are doing the work that is necessary to maintain that building pending further decisions. Option B, we are referring to as a phased elementary campus. So through our work with the ad hoc committee, many ideas were brought forward, and I have to credit the ad hoc committee with thinking out of the box a little on this particular option. So we had long talked about accommodating the students on island via a portable campus, and we had computed the approximate cost of doing so. So through our conversations, the ad hoc committee actually came back and said, well, what if we said that instead of building portables, we use that same amount to rebuild a permanent structure pending an enrollment increase. And we've looked at that internally, felt that that was a more prudent use of taxpayer dollars. If we were going to spend the money anyway, we might as well spend it on a permanent building. So option B would, of course, restore the historic building and stabilize the campus. But then we would provide site improvements in phase 1 of an elementary campus limited to a budget of $5.8 million. Again, that number was arrived at through an analysis of what it would cost us to put a permanent portable campus on the island. We would then enter into a interlocal agreement to complete phase 2 as enrollment projections warranted. During the construction of that $5.8 million project, we would need to accommodate the students, and this option doesn't dictate exactly how we would accommodate those students during that construction timeline, but if needed, we're asking for consideration of an enrollment preference. Construction costs for moving forward, if the enrollment threshold were reached, and we built a 150 student campus, we're looking at about an additional $9 million. So $10.4 million in the first phase, that would be the cost associated with remediating and stabilizing building 2, or the historic building, the $5.8 million in permanent facilities built in lieu of a portable campus, and then obviously the delta between that and the $19 million is phase 2, if and when enrollment was warranted. Option C, we're referring to as the full portable campus with option to build elementary school. So essentially, what we're recommending here, or the option here, is to restore the historic building and stabilize the campus. You'll notice that that is the same across all three options. Provide the site improvements and add a full portable campus classroom. Instruction to begin in fall 2023. And I will say that is all pending a decision. Obviously, time is of the essence. If we, for whatever reason, didn't make a decision for months, then that would be pushed back appropriately. The construction costs for a full custom prototype elementary school for 150 students. So we don't have a design currently for a school of 150 students. We would have to engage architects in that work. We'd also have to take into special consideration the type of building that would need to be built on Fort Myers Beach, given the elevated floodplain. So this is not a design I have sitting on the shelf. Similar to Cafaretta, I would need to engage professionals to put that design together for us. This would also include an interlocal agreement, but the interlocal agreement here would be slightly different. As we would have already built out the campus to its capacity, this interlocal agreement would specifically be around what the continued operations of the school looked like. So if enrollment projections weren't reached by a certain date, it would contemplate what continued operation may look like. The total estimated cost for this particular option is approximately $24.3 million. So as I said in December 12th, I'll restate today, we've put together a variety of options that represent kind of the playing field, so to say. You may today direct us to explore one of these options in greater depth. You may direct us to explore something that is between A, B, or B, C. The intent here is not to bring forward a recommendation, and staff does not support one option over the other. Our goal here today is to provide you with objective information, answer any questions you may have so you may make a well-informed decision. As we've done in the past, we have tabulated the costs associated in tabular values, so you can see how we arrived at said costs. And I don't know that I need to belabor the difference in cost, but they're here in a tabular value. So if you'd like to discuss any specific cost items, we certainly are prepared to do that today. With that, I'd like to turn the conversation back to the superintendent for his comments.
Thank you, Mr. Wagner. Thank you, Mr. Ramirez. I really appreciate your work, and the ad hoc committee members that are present, I appreciate yours as well. I know there have been some spirited discussions, both highs and lows in the course of that process, but I think we've come to some pretty good options for the board to consider today. Board members, I'm not going to attempt to sway you in any way, shape, or form. I'll simply end it there and let you ask the questions of both myself and our team so that we can explain anything you may want. We're looking forward to the public comment as well. And then we can make some decisions about how we maximize the next several weeks to continue to move forward so that we can bring you a final recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent. Board member comments and questions? Mr. Persons.
Just looking under the growth projections, I notice y'all have 6th, 7th, and 8th there. Have we looked into the cost of making a K-8? I just was wondering why they were on there, or?
Throughout the process, we were asked to explore if having a K-8 would increase enrollment to a critical mass. The prototype, the costs that we presented here today represent a K-5 school for enrollment of approximately 150 students.
Thank you. That's all for right now.
Board member questions, comments? Ms. Morgan?
I really have more comments than questions, and please stop me if I exceed my allotted time, and I'll come back and complete my comments. Pre-Ian, had the board been made aware by a previous superintendent that the Fort Myers Beach Elementary School operating cost was not sustainable, the board would have had to make a decision at that time about how to proceed. And the way it would have worked, I presume, is that the board would have directed the superintendent to meet with the mayor of Fort Myers Beach, to have staffs work together to develop what could conceivably be a sustainable plan for Fort Myers Beach. And by that, I mean operating capacity comparable to the other island schools. And that would have been our ethical obligation. An ethical obligation is essentially one that is based on a common understanding of what the rules of the road are. We have the same problem today post-Ian, but the problem is that we're looking at it post-Ian, and that has brought in the moral question as well as the ethical question. What do we do going forward? Essentially, what I'm hearing is that March 1st is essentially a deadline if we're going to move to option C and have it viable by the opening of school year 23. And my question of the board is, can we agree to a sustainable model, short-term and long-term, in that short period of time? I'm presuming that had we done this pre-Ian, we would probably have taken at least a year to consult with our elected partners to decide how to move forward. It's my understanding that staff has worked very hard with the community to come up with a sustainable plan. But in a large sense, it has been without the context of the other elected officials, the other body that we should really be negotiating with if we're going to have a interlocal agreement that describes what our short-term and long-term strategy is. And to me, that represents a problem. And the other thing that I see that concerns me about moving forward on a short-term or long-term basis at this point is that we have asked the community to look at, but they have not looked at other viable options such as a charter school. They have asked us to consider an attractor school, but that has not been fleshed out short-term either in terms of, is it a feasible option? So I guess where I'm at right now is individually, we board members are being asked to feel a moral obligation to the Fort Myers Beach community, and something that has not been customary and traditional. But we have an obligation as a board, an ethical obligation as a board to the community to provide a fair and equitable allocation of resources to this school and to all of the schools in the district. So I don't think we're at a place where we can make a decision between B and C. I think we're at a place where we have to say A is in play for now, but we have to put together a plan that will enable us to make a decision about B or C within the year, just as we would normally have had to do. I mean, essentially, what I'm asking the board to consider is, does the moral obligation to the community trump our ethical obligation to provide a school whose operating cost is comparable to the other island schools, can be reasonably advocated within the larger community as acceptable given the Fort Myers Beach circumstances. Frankly, at this point, I would not be looking for a recommendation from the superintendent other than that we have not engaged in a process that's going to take us to a decision point that gets us somewhere to open school on the beach for the 23-24 school year. And those are my comments. And I have more to say, but I'm happy to listen to the others, to you others. Yeah.
Mr. Persons.
I am not willing to look at it as a strictly financial type thing. I think this is time for us to be a little bit bold. I think we should be thinking about moving ahead. We got to put the kids first. And to me, that means getting them back to a school on the island. I mean, we see a $1 million loss here. Sorry, I did not ask this question of the superintendent earlier, but what is the loss on the Sanibel school? I know it's less per kid, but they have a lot more kids. So what are we spending somewhere along there? Are we losing $1 million on the Sanibel school? Also,
That is a question that I've not been asked.
I apologize for that. We're supposed to ask
I'll
questions.
share with you, there's two ways to look at loss. I think the best way to make the comparison between Sanibel and Fort Myers Beach is the cost analysis comparison located on slide 7, that and I think to a previous board member's comment, I think there is an acceptable range of difference. And you've all expressed that previous in your comments. So right now, I can do some quick math for you here at the dais. And I know some of my finance people are probably, based upon your question, already getting those figures for me. But if you take 12,226 and you multiply it, we can come up with a cost factor, but I'm not sure that's 100% accurate. But I certainly can get you that answer to the question as quickly as possible.
Okay. Again, I apologize for not asking that earlier. I really think, I look at these projections and maybe I'm an optimist, but I see the beach coming back quite a bit stronger. But it's an unknown. I mean, I have to be honest there, but I'm willing to, from my viewpoint, I'd like to see us go ahead and move forward with some component of the B, and give a beach a chance to rebuild. I mean, they've been knocked down now, and the kids being bused to another school and everything, it's got to have been rough after a hurricane, losing their homes. So I think as a historical community and everything, we need to do all we can. But there's always, that's just a politician. But we have to look down the road. And in 3 years, if there's still 50 kids, I think the board is going to have to readdress it. That's the way I would look at it. And like you say, we need to be talking to the community now, but I don't think we should wait 2 years or so to get them back into school by talking to them now and just leaving them out there in limbo, having to be transported off the island. Because with all this construction, I know the transportation on and off that island is going to be very difficult.
Yeah.
More so than even the tourists coming in there normally. So I think we should move ahead with B. It would be where I would fall. That would be my opinion.
Ms. Patrica.
I have some questions first and then I have some comments. So I'll do my questions and then you can come back to me for comments. Is that good? Okay, so how did the demographer come to his numbers? Did he use the community's enrollment projections? Are the community's enrollment projections reasonable? Is what we saw, I know the answer is that what we saw in this presentation was the Davis demographics projections, but if the community's projections are reasonable, and I'm hearing that they are, how can we get that information? Why was that not included today? Can we have some combination of both? Like, what are we looking at? Please.
Staff.
So the numbers presented today were produced by Davis Demographics. They are a nationwide firm that does demographics for more than 900 school districts. They're extremely skilled at what they do, and their projections are typically within single percentage digit points of reality. Those projections were also done post-storm. So they had conversations with developers on the beach, and based on their professional opinion, they stated a couple things. One, the types of housing units they project seen on the beach are going to be very expensive. And in their data, it is very clear that the more expensive the housing unit, the less students per housing unit are produced. So they walked us through how they arrive at our projections here in Lee County, not just for Fort Myers Beach, but in Lee County across the board. The yield of 1,000 housing units of elementary school students across the average across Lee County is 129 students per 1,000 housing units. The high is approximately 347, don't quote me on that number, I'm coming off the top of my head, in Lehigh Acres. So the types of housing units in Lehigh Acres tend to produce more elementary school students than, say, Bonita Springs, where those same numbers are in the low double digits. When they don't have a large enough sample size, and that would be the case in Fort Myers Beach, the demographer uses the county average. So they use the county average to arrive at their numbers. as informed by previous years. So they go back and look at the 5-year enrollment facts. They look at birth rates. So it's, unfortunately, there's not a very clear-cut way where I can tell you that they plug in this and it's completely objective and they come to this number. There are a number of objective factors, and then they use their professional experience. What I can tell you about the numbers that the community came up with is they made some assumptions, and they came back to staff and said, do you think these assumptions are reasonable given what we're talking about doing? So I'll walk you through their assumptions and how they kind of arrived at their numbers. The first assumption was to expand the school's proximity zone. So they looked at, if we bust kids from a further proximity, how many kids would that yield? And we asked the demographer to essentially go through and change the zone. Tell us how many children that would yield. And that yielded approximately 9 students. So within an enlarged proximity zone. Their second exception was an expansion of the waiver and choice option. So could we attract more students off island? And when we say it was reasonable, their assumption was reasonable, they asked how many students, what percentage of students at Sanibel are off island? And we gave them that number. And they used a number of approximately 40%. If we gathered 40% of the student body from off island, is that a reasonable assumption? Well, given the precedence of Sanibel, it is a reasonable assumption. Again, we're working off precedence of something else that's already been in place. The third assumption that they made was including pre-K. And if you included pre-K, yes, that would garner a certain number of students. The reason we didn't bring all this to you in this presentation is there's a lot of what ifs in there. Are we going to even consider a pre-K program at Fort Myers Beach? That's a much larger conversation. And while we can say to staff, yes, those are reasonable assumptions, we do not have the unilateral authority to say, yes, we're going to have a pre-K program, or we're going to expand the boundary zone, or we're going to assume that we're going to grant more waivers for people to come off the island. They also made some additional assumptions. They made an assumption regarding resort and workforce housing. So there would be an increase in a certain type of housing unit on the beach. Given the fact that there are resorts being built on the beach, it is reasonable to assume that you will gather some workforce housing. And we don't know the specifics around the workforce housing. We don't have any commitments from the developers. But if the resorts chose to build workforce housing, it is more likely that workforce housing would produce students than $1 million plus condos. And I think the final kind of assumption was, if we created a magnet school, what could we expect to see in the first year of enrollment? And they looked at a charter sports magnet school. So it was reasonable. Their methodology was reasonable. Again, a good assumption on something that would require a huge commitment that staff is not able to unilaterally make. But as I said in the presentation, I think this represents a good faith effort for the community to realize that enrollment is going to continue to be an issue, and we will have to work together to increase that enrollment. And there is no silver bullet. They're not going to go and build 20,000 new houses on the beach that are going to produce 250 kids. I think everybody realizes that. It will take a multi-pronged approach. So hopefully that is a comprehensive answer to your question.
Very comprehensive, thank you. I have one more set of questions, and then I'll do comments in my second round, if I may. How many students can we house in option B phase 1, please? What are we doing to decrease operational costs? What happens to that building? Should we have to turn the school over to the community to become a charter? And what I mean by what happens to that building, Dr. Bernier through the chair, is, what would the charter school's financial responsibility for the capital infrastructure be going forward? And then I didn't see anything in B about there being an ILA regarding increased enrollment with a potential turnover for a charter. And I know that that's what we've been discussing, but it wasn't in black and white or blue and white or whatever colors we use for the PowerPoint. And I can't do B unless certain measures are met. And I didn't see that written down. Am I making sense?
You are, and I'll let Mr. Wagner or Mr. Ramirez respond to the first question regarding phase one. But let's begin with organizational, the operational costs, and then specifically the charter turnover. We are, in this particular phased option, we would have to continue to look at what the board asked us to look at last time, which was looking at the combination of classes, for instance, that a K1 could be combined, a 2-3 could be combined, potentially even a 4-5. I'm a little reticent to combine 4-5. I think those grade levels get into specificity of curriculum that would require a 4th and a 5th grade teacher. When it comes to the other electives, like an arts program, a music program, and a PE program, I think they're vital to the healthy education of children, but those can be done through what we refer to in our system as an itinerant teacher. So I could get a PE teacher to go out there 2 days a week and host PE. I could have an art teacher another 2 days a week. I could have a music teacher. We could ensure that the children had a full rounded, what I believe, excellent education, because the arts and their physical abilities and other things are things we must continue to develop around them. But they wouldn't necessarily be permanent staff of the school. As enrollments warrant, we could begin then to work with the school advisory committee, the principal, as budgetary numbers increase based upon increased FTE or increased student populations. We could begin to permanently add those faculty members at those specific enrollment points. So we've also, in this particular situation, we've once again removed the cafeteria. The cafeteria would still be housed at Lexington Middle, and those meals would be run onto the island to comply with the national standards for the federal lunch program. Those are just some of the areas for operational costs. The other thing I believe by moving this to permanent structure versus portable structure is we will save, though it's not necessarily calculated in these options, we have the potential to save on some electrical costs. And it will have a smaller footprint than the former Fort Myers Beach Elementary School had, which should reduce some of those operational costs that we were looking at in terms of the red figures, the cost per students when you divide. I was asked earlier by a member of the board to look at those numbers. We're going to have potentially reduced operational costs, but we're also reducing students. So I'm resonant to say that there will be real cost savings until we actually do it. But I think that's my comprehensive answer for operational costs. As to charter and possible turnover, I think I want to answer another question first. That when in option B, the third bullet says an interlocal agreement, ILA, to complete phase 2 as enrollment projections warrant. We are going to need to have an interlocal agreement that speaks to the growth of Fort Myers Beach, and if we make certain enrollments, what the district's going to do. And if we don't make certain enrollments, what we're going to have to do as a board with our community to make a hard decision. Right. So that, and I know I may have gotten in trouble, and I'll say to the ad hoc committee members, I was not attempting, and I know this is going to come up at least at some point, at least in public comment. I was not attempting to go around you. An interlocal agreement is with the town. So I did meet with the mayor. I have started those discussions. I did meet with the town manager, but it was a very brief hour-long sort of discussion of everything from soup to nuts. We didn't make any decisions. Any type of ILA that is generated would come back to an ad hoc committee, not necessary for approval, but for review, because that agreement would be between the school district and the town, but it would be inappropriate not to involve the ad hoc committee in that process. As to charter turnover, certainly there's an expectation of cost. I know that one of the things that will come up is that FEMA is going to pay for all of this. We will do everything possible to dot I's and cross T's so FEMA pays for all of this. But there is no guarantee of FEMA. And to say that we have a guarantee of FEMA would be inappropriate, and I believe potentially even irresponsible. We are working with them as best we can at the moment, and I'm not going to damage the relationship any further by just saying they are a government agency and they have their sense of forms and red tape that we are doing the best we can to work through right now for all of our facilities and all of our communities. Charters would have to have a relationship with the school district. If you have a vacated building, there is statutory references related to the charters have an opportunity to have a vacated building and to utilize if the district is going to leave it as a vacant building. So one of the dangers of option A is to leave a vacant building and have a charter school company see that school building, that one historic building, as enough. It is a realistic expectation, a potential realistic expectation that a charter school could say, oh, this is an opportunity for us. The district is leaving a school building vacant. We would like to apply to have that. Unless we have plans for it, which I think we could win a legal argument on, that we do have plans because of the ILA in option A, that we could move forward, that we could protect the building from a charter school wanting to take it. If we built B and we had some permanent facility, certainly we have an investment into that facility. In some cases, charter schools, even a community charter school or a 501c3 represented by the parents of this community, they could have a couple of different options. They could choose a lease to own, they could attempt to buy it outright from us, or we could get into the long-term business of being their landlord, where we could rent the facility. They would have to take over the operational costs, meaning the power, the electricity, and to some extent, if we were, and this would have to all be worked out in a lease deal, but if we were to take a reasonable fee based upon the FTE until this school building would be eligible for PICO funding. I know I'm being way too maybe comprehensive for all of you, but PICO funding doesn't come to a charter school until their third year of operation. PICO funding are capital dollars that allow them to use to help repair a facility, improve a facility, pay rent. So they would be eligible for PICO dollars, but it would be 2 years down the road. So the district would have to devise some type of lease as to what we would do in that lease and what the charter school would be responsible for, including a payment moving forward. I think that's probably the most reasonable way to move forward in a charter situation, because I don't believe even the PICO dollars that would come to the school would be enough for a full out purchase, and probably not enough to pay their full rent necessarily either. So we'd have to work in order to say this is important to our children and preserve that opportunity.
If I could just,
And then, yeah, I
clear-
don't want to just miss phase one.
but just for clarification, when you say a lease, you don't mean 100 years for $1. You mean some kind of meaningful payment to help with the capital investment that's been made by the district. Is that fair?
I'm saying that we would have to create a lease, probably less than if we were to rent it to someone who had significant supply of cash. This school building as a charter will generate their FTE dollars based upon whatever their enrollment is. Additionally, 2 years in, the state, based upon enrollment and square footage, would provide PICO dollars on top of that. That would not meet what I would call a market rate rental fee. It just won't. So the district would have to work with that charter school to reach a compromise so that they could continue to operate, but still continue to contribute to the capital process we worked into. That's why I think a long-term lease would be a more reasonable expectation of the district than a lease to own, because then we'd have to negotiate with lawyers and real estate people and make sure that we were in an appropriate place. All of these things being really theoretical, because all of these things being really theoretical. So phase one enrollment was the first question, which we bypassed. I apologize to my team. Hopefully you've held on to the question and the response.
No, correct. And in phase one of the elementary, the intent was to return the students from St. Carlos back to the school. So the priority was current students at Fort Myers Beach Elementary would be returning in phase one. And then we would look to enrollment, as we go forward in subsequent years.
That's not a number. I'm sorry. How many students will fit in a building for phase?
Oh, that's a different question. I think Mr. Ramirez was responding to how many students would we foresee if we could get the building open in August of 23, how many students? Right now, we're looking at the 52 that are currently enrolled. How many students could it fit is a slightly different question. I'll have to defer to Mr. Wagner.
We have not designed a building, obviously, to that $5.8 million, but we are confident that it would accommodate the pre-storm enrollment of approximately 80 students.
Okay. That's my question. Thank you.
Ms. Juvenelli.
Thank you. Boy, lots of great questions and answers. I think for me, stabilization is probably the first thing we need to do. I'm like Mr. Persons. Anyways, it took me a moment, I'm sorry. But I think that, so I was looking, so I have a question regarding Sanibel School. How many students actually attend the school that lives on the island, and how many are, yeah, of that? And then what's our number there at Sanibel? So I have a couple questions.
I want to make sure before my staff responds that we're absolutely sure of those numbers. We're not prepared to discuss the Sanibel School today. I know there's approximately 260 students there.
Okay.
If they're prepared to provide those numbers, I would like to make sure that we say as of a certain date when we last checked on those numbers so that we're aware, because student enrollment on island and off island, especially in an island in recovery, significantly changes. We have a number of students who at Fort Myers Beach Elementary that, given the opportunity to get their homes fixed and repaired, will return to the island. They're not currently residing there. So I'll turn it to staff.
So numbers to date, as of, I believe, last week when we had a check, there was actually 211 students total that were currently there. We can provide the breakdown. I don't have the exact breakdown, K5 and 6-8, and then the percentage of students off the island. We can get that. I don't have that number currently, but we can provide that to you.
Thank you. So my reason for that is that we don't know what the workforce is going to be on Fort Myers Beach. We know there's going to be growth. What that actually looks like today, we don't know. With Margaritaville coming, I know workforce is going to need to put their children in school, and they're going to want them near and close by them, especially because of the drive that they may have to get there and the drive home. That's the same issue that Sanibel has going on and off the island before pre-hurricane. So, and that's the same way Fort Myers Beach is. I believe that making life a little easy for families is what we should be thinking about as well a little bit. And that's that travel and keeping their children close to them and being able to get them in because keeping the family unit together. So if we change Fort Myers Beach to a K-8, and the numbers that was just projected today by Davis Demographics puts it at 120 students. Well, that's almost our 150 students that we're even talking about in option B. So we're close to having a school at that point that meets the requirements that we're expecting or asking for in Plan B. So I think that's really important to actually think about, because I think if you change it to K-8, you're going to have some growth there. And obviously, because I just can add, and it's 120 students approximately. So I think, and one of my notes, I actually said we need to partner with Fort Myers Beach Council as well as our community, in which we haven't really done so. That's been openly we've actually discussed that here at the dais. So I think that's really important, because the projected workforce is something that we don't know, but I think we have to plan for. And I like the 3-year option to see what that looks like in 3 years and see where the growth went, because I know Fort Myers Beach is going to change, but the growth could be more than 150 students. We really don't know. So I think we need to look at that a little more regarding changing it to K-8 and accommodating the families. And working with the council is huge, and that's a piece that I unfortunately I wish we were farther along in that conversation today. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, can I?
Go ahead. Mr. Superintendent.
One of the reasons why we've not brought a K-8 option to this point is you would have to do a complete redesign. So all the numbers that we provided you today would be significantly more expensive. Additionally, for a K-8 to meet Florida standards, it needs gyms, it needs additional music space, art space, and it's going to require additional teachers. Even at 150 with a K-5, we are still going to have operational costs that are going to far exceed some of the other buildings we have. So I just want us to be aware that that was explored. The ad hoc committee, and certainly in our first town halls, there was conversations about K-8s. The figures that we're sharing with you rise astronomically, and additionally what could occur is our costs for personnel also rise because you need a bigger footprint, more square footage, more facilities. And we've been working with SREF. Borrowing of facilities puts this board in a precarious legal position. Can we borrow the library? Can we borrow the community center? Technically, yes. But it puts you in a very precarious liability standard because you don't control those facilities, how they're maintained, nor how they're accessed. So I do appreciate the board member's comment. We did look at K-8s when we initially started this process. Our best opportunity with a K-8, and I'll defer to Mr. Wagner, but if we were to design and build a K-8, you're looking at not only the remainder of this year, all of next, but probably the following year before anything was done out on the beach. So we'd be extending the return of those students for potentially a whole additional year.
Quick follow-up, Ms. Juvenile.
Thank you, Dr. Bernier. So even if we added add the portables for the middle school as well?
It's more than just classroom space. It's the requirement for the additional space regarding gym, music, other classrooms. The middle school curriculum changes from an elementary where kids are grouped for all 4 subjects in one location. Now, all of a sudden, for each 6th grade student, I need 4 teachers. I need an ELA, I need a math, I need a science, and I need a social studies. For every 7th grade student, I need the same. For every 8th grade student, I would need the same. So as we add a grade level, it's not 1 more teacher. As we add 3 grade levels, it's at a minimum 12 more teachers that we would have to add just to meet the academic requirements of that curriculum.
Thank you.
Mr. Persons.
I just want to clarify the math, Mr. Giovanelli. The way this reads is with the K-8. It's not, you don't add it to the K-5. So that would be the total. So it would only be like 70 students. So that I would think would take that off the table. My quick math on the number of students at like Sanibel times approximately 4,000 more than we spend on average takes it over $1 million for that school a year. I don't want to call it a loss, but we're spending $1 million. So we're spending about the same on both schools. So I don't feel it's fair to pick on Fort Myers Beach for that reason. The tax base of Fort Myers Beach is going to be huge down the road, but it's going to be huge. And just like it is on Sanibel, you know, you may not have quite as many kids, but now you have $1 million home, they're going to pay a lot more in taxes. So if we're losing about $1 million with the extra money we spend at Sanibel, and I don't know about Pine Island or the others, but I think it's definitely something we should consider for these kids. I mean, it's all about the kids, what's best for them. I mean, I hate to lose money on any school. I understand that, but we got to put the kids first. And again, I believe that the transportation issue for elementary kids for so long is just unbearable. I mean, we're doing the whole proximity plan to reduce transportation time in the district. So I'd like to see that continue. That's my comment.
Ms. Jordan.
Thank you. I really appreciate everybody's comments. I do have a couple questions. I know and thank you, Mr. Pearson, when he just spoke about proximity and transportation. Where are our children who live there right now? Where are they? How will they get to the school? That would be my question, is how will they get there? Are they going to be bused on the island? So we'll be pulling kids from off the island on the island. So they'll be busing them onto the island. Because to me, it's like, I know that a lot of them are not living on the island right now. And I know with the count I know everybody keeps bringing up Sanibel, but there was 130 pre-K through 5, and I think 81 middle schoolers. So coming up to 211 students. And I'm just curious about how do we get our children there? I'm all for making sure our students have a school, because I believe that, it is part of the Fort Myers Beach, the community, the history. So I was on that beach for many, many years. And I also, looking at too, Lexington shares the gym at Wakahatchee or whatever that is, whatever that's called, where the gym could be shared with Bay Oaks. So that would be maybe something that, going forward, if we, start off small and then adding on the middle schoolers, we would then have maybe an opportunity to use that there. And then you could keep the kids on the island that would have to go off the island to Cypress or Lexington or one of those schools for middle school. The kitchen, once we do build a kitchen, because I know they did this at Bayshore, the kitchen at Bayshore was built large enough so if there was to ever be an extension to a K-8, that the cafeteria is already set up and designed for middle school, even though we have to have the 4-4-4. I just wanted to put that out there. Let's see. And I do think that a magnet program may, work, because I know the C School does draw people over there on the island as well. So perhaps with everybody's ideals, what everybody's been speaking about, if you combine all of those together, I think we would have a good way in to rebuilding that school. I'm not for A. I think B would be the one that I would recommend if we were going to go on, as far as I am concerned. But I definitely think that we have to work, because workforce housing, when I look at that, working on the beach, and for years, I would never have ever thought about bringing my family there to work, because I know working in hospitality, we have no idea what time our schedules are, even though they say you are working from 8 to 5. It's all conducive to the tourism. It's conducive to the business. You could be out of there at 2 o'clock. You could be sent home as soon as you get there. So you're going to leave the island and come back and get your child. So there's so much to look at when you're looking at workforce. And is there workforce housing, which is unknown to all of us? Is it family workforce housing, or is it individual like Captiva had, where it was more of a dorm style housing, which then of course there would not be children on living in that. So that's a lot of things that we are not sure of as well. And but I just really appreciate all the conversation, and I know how hard the beach and the city mayor and everyone, they have been engaged in the conversation as well. So it's not like they're not part of the conversation, as just mentioned.
Mr. Chair, if I may. Ms. Jordan, can I ask a question? You used some numbers. Can you help me better understand? I believe the number I wrote down was 211. Where's that number coming from?
I asked for those numbers last week because I had one of the council asked for that from Sanibel.
From Sanibel.
Yes.
All right. I want to make sure. I was confusing that with some type of projection for Fort Myers Beach.
No, sir.
Okay.
That's Sanibel.
The other piece, and just, Mr. Chair, if I may, the piece about the Lexington situation. Lexington and the community center were built at the same time. They were built to SREF standard.
Right.
And there is very secure perimeter in that gymnasium during the day to separate both the community and anybody who may and who should be welcome to the community center from a student population. Chesterfield Lunsford Act is a really great example of shared space. When we're using a media center or we're using a community center, in all intents and purposes, it has to be closed off to all other visitors. Otherwise, everybody stepping into that building has to have a very deep background check and be fingerprinted to be sure that they can be allowed around children. I assume all residents are those types of people, but we also have to assume that all residents are not those types of people. So that's the difference at Lexington. It was built to SREF standards so that it could be shared, and it was built as a joint use, from what I understand, it was built as a joint use project between the county and the school district.
Thank you. I'm okay with being corrected.
Okay, real quick, I know Ms. Patrica had indicated a moment ago that she had follow-up questions. I know Ms. Morgan did too, at least comments. I just want to ask 2 questions, if I may go ahead with that. Okay, in regards to FEMA, and Dr. Bernier had mentioned this, if we end up getting money or reimbursement, excuse me, from FEMA, would we expect that in the short term?
I,
Generally based on historical context.
Generally, based upon historical context, FEMA is an enigma that we are continuing to work through. I would always stop short of any guarantee. I've said it right from the very beginning of this crisis. I cannot guarantee FEMA reimbursement. In the short term or long term, my other response would be the feedback and the financial dollars flowing for FEMA will be in the longer term, not in the immediate short term.
Okay, thank you for that answer. I appreciate it. So second one is for Dr. Bernier or Attorney Dupree Bruno, perhaps. So based upon state law and what we're looking at, who can attend Fort Myers Beach Elementary?
Based upon our current enrollment policy, and even with the new proximity plan that you enacted, anyone can attend Fort Myers Beach Elementary School. Part of an ILA would be to work with the ad hoc committee to expand that attendance zone, as we've said we would. 9 students are 9 students. If we can get 9 more students, they asked to work with us. They asked to do some recruitment. They asked us to look for things. We can certainly expand that recruitment zone down San Carlos. There was another piece at the community meeting, the town hall meeting, that I know the ad hoc looked at, and I know Dr. Malloy has looked at. That's the potential of including the other Fort Myers Beach zip codes, as some of those students are currently attending other schools, so they could make an informed decision to shift if they wanted to. We would not remove those students and force them to go to Fort Myers Beach. I don't think that's appropriate either. But we've also started conversations at your direction with Florida Gulf Coast University regarding the water school, the entrepreneurial magnet. We've looked at all sorts of early discussions with them, all of these to be memorialized in an ILA moving forward as an agreement between us and the town representing the community that we serve. And we could do those types of things. That's why it was important to get started with the mayor as quickly as possible. And I do want to just make note, the vice mayor of the town has served on the ad hoc committee. So they have been there right from the very beginning. And certainly they were being in there right back to our first town hall. So the local township government is involved. I think when we get to a decision of what we're going to do with the beach, and we know what we're going to do, then we can begin to leverage the use of the ad hoc and the town government to then clean up that ILA and bring something forward for us to consider. We're going to start that work in earnest, right? We have to. But for us to get students back, if that is ultimately what we recommend and you decide to do, we're going to need to start moving on this particular building. No question about it.
Thank you, Dr. Bernier. I just wanted a couple of things cleared up on the record. I appreciate that. Now we'll go down to Ms. Morgan for her comments.
First of all, in my opinion, the sustainability of the island schools is a function of their operating costs. And despite the fact that we may be spending $1 million more at Sanibel, just as we are spending $1 million more at Fort Myers Beach, that is a significant difference in per pupil investment. And the fact of the matter is that there are areas in this community that would love to have that kind of investment per pupil, whether it's the island school, whether it's Sanibel or Fort Myers Beach. And we really have to look at all of the kids and all of the programs. This is not about Fort Myers Beach. This is about how we provide resources to every child in this district. It's about equity in how we provide resources to every child in this district. And at some point, we may have to look at all the island schools and say, are they sustainable as traditional public schools? That doesn't say we close island schools. It says that we may have to look at a different model just because of the specific situation. So from my point of view, the sustainability is operating cost and equity. My question to the superintendent through the chair, please, is, do you anticipate an interlocal agreement before we commit to phase one of option B?
I would like to have an interlocal agreement before you, at least in draft form, sort of approved by both the town's attorney, ours, and having the ad hoc committee look at it before you made a decision regarding. That means, and I shared with all of you in your individual one-on-ones, these are kind of like power weeks for us post this meeting until our next opportunity post spring break. I'm sorry, in the early part of March, and then going into spring break, where we really need to get some significant work done. And I believe that the community is ready to come to that plate. I know that the mayor and his town manager had said to me, you know, let's get the next meeting scheduled. And then what we agreed to is we would continue to schedule them every time we broke off. So we would have the next sustainable meeting to move forward. And as that agreement develops, bring that to the ad hoc committee for additional input and at least for their review.
And a second follow-up question to the superintendent through the chair, please. What is the transportation time to Sanibel from Fort Myers Beach? And I believe the other school that's being considered is Heights. So what is the transportation time for those students from Fort Myers Beach to the two alternative schools that would be proposed for the upcoming school year if we cannot put those students back on the beach? Thank you. And those are my questions and comments.
Mr. Chair, Board Member Morgan, I'll have to get back to you specifically on the times that it takes to drive from a particular location located in Fort Myers Beach, because everybody lives in a different place. But if we were to choose, for instance, the bus stop at the Walmart and drive to Sanibel and drive to Heights, depending on the time of day and the time of year, that number changes. But I can get Mr. Lloyd, our Director of Transportation, to provide me a reasonable expectation and number.
Thank you.
Ms. Patrica.
Mr. Chair, I know we're running a little bit long, and if you're anything like me, that makes your head want to pop off. But I do think that this is a tremendously important conversation for this community who has obviously shown up to hear what we have to say. So I beg your indulgence as we finish. FEMA will pay for all of this. I have heard that statement made over and over and over again, and I don't believe it. I'm sorry. Having lived through Irma and having only 2/3 of our Irma costs reimbursed, whenever anybody says FEMA will pay for this, I just don't believe it. I am not slamming the federal government. I am not slamming FEMA, but I do know that there are people who up in New Orleans who are still waiting to recover money from Hurricane Katrina. So you asked, is it a long-term reimbursement or is it short-term? It could be very, very long-term. And even if FEMA were to pay for 100% of it, we have a responsibility to be good stewards of those dollars as well, because those are taxpayer dollars as well. So FEMA will pay for all of it. I know that we're doing things differently, and I have more confidence that we will recover more than 2/3 because of how we are conducting ourselves post-Ian. I think we're doing a better job of documentation. I think we have a better shot at being reimbursed for more, but 100%, I'm sorry, I can't make a decision based on that belief because I don't hold that belief. Now, I find myself, as I said, the last time we discussed this in a strange situation because I make decisions based on data. And if I'm going to make a decision based on data or business or being a fiscal conservative, A is the only option on the table, because none of the other options are fiscally responsible or conservative or based on data. They're based on another hat that I've decided to wear in this circumstance, which is that of a member of a governing board of an educational school district. And part of our responsibility is community building and making sure the communities have what they need. And so in that regard, I do believe that B is the best option because it allows me to be fiscally conservative in the long run, and it allows me to help this community to survive. I'm not completely abandoning my fiscal conservatism, but I'm hedging my bets a little bit in building a smaller school. 24 million, 25 million is not something that I can see myself doing right now. It's funny, Ms. Morgan, if I may, through the chair, direct my comments. It's funny, you talk about equity, and I believe B is equitable. Why? every time I think about equity, I think about those 3 people at a fence trying to watch a baseball game, and what does each person need? What this community needs right now is a school. And so from my perspective, equality would not necessarily mean giving them a school, but equity means giving people what they need in order to be successful. And to me, equity requires, in my decision-making process, equity requires B. If we wait a year, I genuinely believe this school will never reopen. It's just a gut feeling that I have. I sense that if we do A and we mothball that school, they just are not going to have the ability to ever reopen that school. I just don't think they have the resources. They definitely don't have the resources to make it a charter right now. I hope that we can get our enrollment up. I hope that we come up with some kind of an agreement, some kind of a plan where 3 years from now, we're looking at 150 kids and we're busting at the seams, and we've got to do something to get more seats there for those kids. But I'm not convinced that that's the case, which is, again, where B is a good compromise, because we're not investing in a 150 student station school that could end up being mothballed at some point in the future. We're giving the community what they need right now. And the other thing is, I would be uncomfortable making a decision at an action meeting to support B without an ILA in place. Because to me, that ILA could make or break my vote. I mean, if Bay Oaks is not open and ready to go for after-school care, to me, this whole thing falls apart, because this community needs after-school care in order for it to operate an elementary school. And there are other pieces to the ILA that make it really a make or break situation for me. If you bring back an ILA that has ridiculous, student enrollment projections, or something that is simply unacceptable, what is the town's commitment? That's what I need to see in the ILA. What is the community's commitment? In black and white, on paper, with numbers, I need to see all of that. I believe that in theory, we have reached a compromise with B, but the devil is in the details. And those details will ultimately dictate whether I can support B on the night of an action meeting, if that makes sense. And then the other thing that I know that probably all of us at this table are dealing with is what Fort Myers Beach wants versus what Lee County wants. Because you step off Fort Myers Beach and the conversation regarding Fort Myers Beach is, you're not going to pay for that. You're not going to do that, are you? I mean, the pushback outside of Fort Myers Beach has been tremendous to not reopen that school and not invest any capital in the infrastructure there. That being said, I still believe that B is the compromise between fiscal conservatism and my responsibility to make sure that our students and our parents and our community have what we want. So those are my comments. Thank you.
I'm going to go ahead and make my comments unless somebody else has something at the moment. So thank you to the board for this discussion. I appreciate it. Thank you to staff as well, and thank you to the members of Fort Myers Beach that are out here. I can tell you all of us have definitely heard you. This is a very complex issue. I recently, with Mr. Wagner, in fact, went and visited the school and walked the school to really get that perspective of where things are at right now. As I said, as a parent, I definitely feel for your kids. I understand that, especially with the bus rides and things like that and being completely uprooted. So, I mean, it's, that's obviously something that none of us want for your kids right now. So, looking at it for options, we are not coming to a final decision today. I want to make sure that the public is aware of that. We're just trying to look at our options and give a little bit of direction in regards to our staff and our superintendent right now. For me, looking at it, I really appreciate some of the options. One thing Ms. Morgan had mentioned about a timeline and stuff and how we'd normally do that. And I do appreciate that comment. I understand. However, the hurricane changes it. I remember talking recently to some members out of Bay County or ones out of Charlotte County, how the playbook changes complete with a hurricane. So I completely understand what you're saying, but I'm also, for me personally, I'm looking at that from that perspective. So for me, as I said, there's there's a lot of things going back and forth. I want to make sure that, you know, we're taking care both of Fort Myers Beach and the entire district. For me, I don't know, and I don't think anyone up here knows exactly what Fort Myers Beach is going to be in the future. So looking at it, for me, option C, again, is not a final decision, but I can't get on board with option C at the moment. It's too speculative. And as I said, the fiscal responsibility part, you know, me personally, I could not put that much resources in it to the moment. That's why I appreciate some of the board member comments in regards to option B. I think that gives us kind of a look at being able to have the best of both worlds in regards to get the kids back in the beach, see where we're at, give you a chance to build up enrollment, and then maybe down the road we could go to something like an option C. But for me, that's not on the table for me at the moment. So trying to think if there's anything else. I appreciate everything. I don't know if Dr. Bernier has any last comments. Actually, one other thing. We talked about an MOU. I agree with that. Ms. Patrick, I want to make sure we have, you know, in regards, you know, if it's option B, some kind of MOU, at least in the table with that. I also know the superintendent was looking at time frame with that. For me, I would be looking at 3 years. I don't know, at least a general time frame. I don't know what the rest of the board feels in regards to that. If 3 years is around an approximate time frame, we could look at least to get forward with that MOU, if there's any objection to that. Okay, Mr. Superintendent, is there anything else you need out of us at the moment?
Yeah, I got about a million questions, but no, I think thank you for that last point, Mr. Chair, that aspect of an ILA, an interlocal agreement. We're looking at a 3-year agreement that I guess that looks at year 1, what would happen, year 2, what would happen, year 3, what would happen, and decision points moving forward. I heard some really important things about the community center that would need to be part of the ILA. If board members are prepared, if you would permit, I'd like to hear more about that, about an ILA or anything that you would. I know enrollment projections, clearly a part of it. And operational numbers, we would commit then to looking at the attendance zones and doing things to expand. We would continue to look at options with an ILA regarding enrollment preferences in case those students are unable to get back. But our goal would be to try to get them back as quickly as possible. And our goal would be for the fall. I'm not sure that that's necessarily realistic depending on when we have to make this decision. So so that may take an ILA to a 4th year while we do some things. Again, those are issues and concerns that we have to work out. We have to continue to dialogue with both the town and the mayor. Are there other just sort of short one-word things that the board members would be looking for in an ILA that sort of would be deal breakers if I didn't bring it forward? That's the only other question I have.
Go ahead, board. Ms. Morgan?
Yeah, I think the question would be what happens to the building? I mean, we talked about, we build a building and the school fails, then we have to have some understanding about who's responsible for any costs that the district has absorbed in, building the building. Thank you.
Ms. Patrick, I think, was next.
So operational costs, I believe, Dr. Bernier, that you are doing what you can from a district side to decrease those operational costs, but is there anything the town or the community can do to come up with some kind of a fund to support the operational costs so that it decreases that difference in what we're paying on the beach versus what we're paying district-wide on an average? And you know what? If we can get that cost down closer to the average, and 3 years from now, we still have 52 students, but we're paying what we're paying at Sanibel or at Pine Island, I don't think we turn it over as a charter. I think that long-term, that operational cost is the big nut that needs to be cracked.
Ms. Jordan?
I do not feel that they will fail. They're not going to fail. They're just not going to. The parents are engaged. It's like Edison Park and Franklin Park back in the days when they became magnet schools. Parents were engaged, community was engaged. The schools, succeeded. I don't see this school failing. So I think that we just need to make sure that Bay Oaks is on board with us for that, maybe before or after, especially when they're looking at kids coming over from workforce. We just need to make sure that they're with us.
Ms. Juvenile.
And I would actually agree with that. I think it's critical that we partner with everyone on the island, the businesses as well. I think that we have to have some sort of a form of commitment on their end to make sure it's successful. So I think it's not just families and not just the Fort Myers Beach Council, but the community and the businesses there that support that community, because I think that is going to be critical. Thank you.
I was going to mention something similar to Ms. Juvenile. I would leave that at community partnerships. Do we have any other, Mr. Persons?
I just would like to ask the beach to approach all these new resorts that are going in there for help. I mean, they're spending multi-millions of dollars, and there's several, I know, on the planning stage also. And I know they're going to be wanting concessions because the price of land has gotten so expensive out there that they're going to have to go up a little bit higher. I know you don't want it to look like Miami, but even Sanibel Heights sort of things would be very helpful. And hopefully they'll come around and support the school system. But that has to come from y'all. We can't go ask them to do that. That's all.
Anybody else? One thing I'd also like to mention to the Fort Myers Beach community, if we end up going the option B route is, we will do everything we can, but things may not be perfect from the beginning. We'll do our best, but I kind of witnessed that from the Sanibel school, that we're still working on stuff. They were super excited to be back, but we still have work to do there. So, Mr. Superintendent, is there anything else you need us to clarify?
Not clarify, I just want to say thank you. This has been a very productive workshop to provide both myself, Mr. Ramirez, and Mr. Wagner with the direction we needed. I appreciate your candor and your desire, and thank you to the chair for that additional question. Appreciate that opportunity to ensure that as we begin to work on an ILA, that we have the categories necessary for all particular board members to feel comfortable with the ILA that we produce, to put with a projection and a proposal moving forward. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ramirez. Thank you, Mr. Wagner. Thank you, Mr. Superintendent. Thank you to the Fort Myers Beach community partners and families for your hard work. We appreciate it. So now we're going to move on to public comment. Attorney Dupree Bruno, could you please address public comment?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon. School board policy provides the opportunity at this point in the meeting to address the board concerning any matter on this meeting's agenda. If you completed a public comment card, please provide it to staff. The public comment will be held at the podium in the center aisle in the front. Please be advised that the board will not respond during public comment to remarks made by speakers. Speakers who fail to follow proper decorum in the chambers will be ruled out of order. Any speaker continuing with such remarks will be required to relinquish the microphone per board policy 1.11 and may be removed from the chambers. There will be one warning. For board policy 1.11, the time per speaker will be 3 minutes, as we have 15 speakers that have signed up. You will find a countdown on the big screen in the front of the room. Once your time has elapsed, the microphone will automatically shut off. Please state your name when you approach the microphone, and I will call you 5 speakers at a time. Please follow staff's direction. And Mr. Chairman, as I stated, we have 15 speakers that wish to address the board.
Is there anyone else in the audience that has not signed up for public comment that wishes to talk? Seeing none, just want to remind everyone in the public that in a briefing, that public comment is limited to the agenda items. Please proceed and call the name, Ms. Attorney, Ms. Dupree Bruno.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Will the following individuals please line up? Gwen Gittins, Tarek Peterson, Sharon McGill, Jim Adderholt, Lori Zamniak. And we do want you to, if you could please step back. Thank you.
We ready? Okay, my name is Gwen Gittens. Thank you, everyone. And the first comment I want to do is to give kudos to Ms. Morgan. Thank you so much for your comments and using the E word equity and showing people that it is something that we need to have in education. Regarding the discipline conversation, I would really like to see an update with the data and financials for not only Success Academy, but also the Prevention Center. The Prevention Center was put together for vaping, and I did not see it broken out up there as which area was vaping. So I would like to see, so we can see how much we're spending on both places and the efficacy of each one. I agree with Ms. Patrica that we need more data breakdown. And I've constantly asked for a comparison of the academics and the discipline scores of the students that are mostly in our discipline lists, because I do believe that they are definitely connected. And someone mentioned about teachers. There are teachers that have and are leaving because of a lack of discipline and support. And if we are still, it should be easy to get that data, because we should be doing exit interviews of all of our teachers that are leaving. And if we don't have it, we need to be doing that. Regarding the naming of QQ, first of all, let me say, like Ms. Jordan said, I would like to know who the ad hoc committee is. If we consistently keep doing the same thing, we get the same result. The numbers of the names of the organizations that you tap each time you ask for an answer do not include the Hispanic community, the Haitian community, the Black community, the organizations of churches, Boys and Girls Club, YMCA, after-school programs. Those people are not brought into that ad hoc. So the area out east is the most diverse in the county, and we should be showing that in making decisions. And regarding the choice of name, Mrs. Teal, would you wave your hand, please? This is Mr. Teal's wife, and she is here, and she is very aware of what is going on and very behind the scenes working on it. Why should we choose Mr. Teal's name? He is an educator from middle school. He worked in the district. It doesn't matter that he's not from the East Zone, or because I don't think
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Terry Peterson. I am a product of the Lee County school system. I also work for you guys. I taught school here for about 15 years before I got hurt and everything. I've had some positive and negative experiences here in Fort Myers. I was a middle school student of Mr. Teal. I went to Fort Myers Middle School, and without him, I would have never got a chance to go to Kentucky. Meet, what is his name? Coach for Kentucky. I shook the hands of Governor Ford, Adolph Rupp, I think his name is. I met him. I shook hands with Dick Gregory, Muhammad Ali, and all these things were inspired by Mr. Teal. Mr. Teal and Mr. White, Fred White, of Fort Myers Middle School. They got me through a lot of things. I played rebel football, #1 in the nation, 2 years in a row. Academics was the key. Athletics was one, but academics, always education. Education was the key to Mr. Teal in the community and church. That's what he had us do. Community, church, people first. That's why I think this school should be named after Lemuel Teal. I also taught at Lehigh Middle School. And I think they'll be proud to have that name on their banner. Thank you.
Next speaker can come on down.
Good afternoon. My name is Jim Adderhold. I'm the Vice Mayor for the town of Fort Myers Beach, and I also serve on the ad hoc committee. I'm also here on behalf of our mayor, Dan Allers, who is with us 100%, but had a meeting with Kevin Guthrie, who's the State Emergency Management Director, and it was at this time. Our whole council's here today. John King is a member of our council. He's not going to be speaking out of respect for your time, but the other two councilors will be speaking. As a representative of the ad hoc committee, I've kept abreast the mayor and the town council of the discussions that we've had with your senior team that have been excellent. And there, the town council and the mayor are in strong support of an interlocal agreement. As a fiscal conservative, I too share your concerns about the operational costs of the beach school, particularly the cost per student. The ad hoc committee is working collaboratively with the superintendent's senior team and has come up with very serious solutions, which over a reasonable period of time will almost double enrollment and cut operational costs in half. These solutions are in partnership with Lee County School District and would be codified in an interlocal agreement with the town of Fort Myers Beach. Any progress would have metrics and be measured so we could all be held accountable. Having said that, this is the worst possible time for the children and the parents of the beach school to be having this conversation. I remember back on February 8th when the Sanibel Elementary School reopened, and I can honestly say everyone in Fort Myers Beach was genuinely happy for those kids and parents. But on that same day, the school bus to pick up the kids at Fort Myers Beach and take them off to their new school off island was 2 hours late. The bus to pick the kids up was also 2 hours late. I'm watching our parents as we had an ad hoc committee meeting that day, many of whom work full-time with their faces drawn from exhaustion, eyes glued to their phones, desperately trying to figure out how to get their kids picked up. We need your help. Please remember, every vehicle on the island was destroyed by Hurricane Ian. Everyone on the ad hoc committee is not living in their homes. Most of the parents and kids at the beach school are not living at their homes, but they'll return soon. This is a very hard time for our island, but here we are. And we've come up with serious solutions to solve the very real issues of operational costs and cost per student. The beach school is a big part of the fabric of Fort Myers Beach. Hurricane Ian has shredded that fabric for a time, but we are already coming back at a striking pace. With your help, we can once again be a beautiful quilt. Please help our beach school. Thank you, and God bless.
Will the following individuals please line up? John Koss, Monica Schmucker, Patrick Vaness, Karen Woodson, Jenny Tardif Paradiso.
Good afternoon, Sharon McGill. I've been listening with interest to all the comments and made tons of notes myself. And I appreciate the passion for the Fort Myers Beach School. And in the best case scenario, yes, there should be a beach school, but we have to stay fiscally responsible. And every one of you mentioned that today in your comments. And so I guess it comes down to, what do you consider fiscally responsible? And how far does that go? And the operating costs and the sustainability and the equity and your commitment to all of the students of the district. Now, the interlocal agreements come up in addition to things the district could do, like combining classes, smaller footprint for the school, having temporary teachers, or I don't know what word that was that you used for that would come in for some of the classes so they wouldn't be district personnel and have all the insurance costs and everything that would go along with that. But I'd like to see that. I'd like to see what kind of savings that you think that would come up with. And then to the Fort Myers Beach people, you have major resorts on the island now, several, okay? And you have new ones coming in. What percent, or pre-Ian, what percent of their workforce came from off island? And what percent of that workforce do they think had small children that would have come to the island? I think those questions need to be asked to get an idea of how many children you might expect. Because driving all the way from Lehigh Acres, possibly, if you have a child in middle school, you're probably going to want to leave that child close to that, an elementary child closer to that child. Okay, so I think those demographics of who you're looking at coming onto the island and bringing children is something that needs to be explored a little bit more. Because I was surprised that the Boca Grande Charter School wasn't used as a comparison, and having applied the same thing to Fort Myers Beach as Boca Grande has, and that didn't even come up as an option. So that was a little disturbing, because the options that are here basically are the options that we had in December with a few modifications. So I'm not really quite sure why we didn't think out of the box a little bit more for options. Thank you.
Okay. Hi, I am Lori Zamniak, and I'm the current fourth grade teacher at Fort Myers Beach Elementary. I've been at the school for 27 years, so my heart and dedication has been at that school for almost 3 decades. I've been there so long that the graph that you showed with the peak enrollment at 200, I have been at that school for that entire decline. I've watched our school district also grow over all of those years too. So I will start with what is quoted directly off of the opening page of our school district's website. Schools in Lee County play a key role in community life. Fort Myers Beach Elementary, as many people have already stated, is an important piece of the Fort Myers Beach community and should remain that way for many decades to come. I also pulled off that our district's vision and mission statement is to be a world-class school system. To be a world-class school system must include innovation and new ideas. This is where the rebuilding of Beach Elementary contributes to that world-class system. There's an amazing opportunity here to reinvent the school as a magnet STEM school. These ideas have been discussed in the many town hall and ad hoc meetings. The difference now is that parents and community members have made contact with many agencies, including FGCU, to obtain interest to help the school move forward with these programs. Many options have been discussed in the several town hall and ad hoc meetings on how to attract more students, as many of you guys have also said. But to do this, we need a school, we need a facility. As a community and school, we have many ideas on how to boost enrollment, but ultimately you, the school district, is in charge of enrollment. I totally understand in education it must be equitable and fair. So what is fair and equitable? Is it that the cost must be the same? Well, the cost to educate each child is not the same. To keep it fair and equitable, or to level the playing field, as is used in district terms. If I use that same philosophy for my classroom to justify rebuilding Beach Elementary, you would have to understand differentiation. Instruction is based partly on a student's needs each day. Therefore, some students will get more teacher time than others. Equate that to more money than others. They are all still receiving a fair and equitable education based on their needs. It's just the path to get there is not always the same. Thus, the path to rebuild Beach Elementary right now is not the same needs as other schools. Equitable does not always equate to the same dollars. I also understand our school needs sustainability with bringing to over operational costs down. Again, this can be done if our enrollment is allowed to increase to the sustainable level. But we need your help to do this as you ultimately control enrollment. We do need more help right now to pick ourselves back up and be a school again. We are one of the top ranking elementary schools in the district. I can assure you every staff member there does everything they can to make sure those kids still succeed. We're still doing it now. Please don't deliver that final punch to the students most of all, but the parents, the community, and your dedicated staff. Why would you close an A-rated top school? There's such an amazing opportunity here for the district to develop the campus into a forward-thinking school of the future.
Thank you, Ms. Zamniak. Go ahead and finish your thought, but thank you, Ms. Zamniak.
All right, I'll just email the rest.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hi, my name is John Koss. Excuse me, I switched through. I was going to stay up here based on how the presentation went. There's been a lot of talk about the ILA and the path forward tonight. I would hope that you guys would consider, obviously a big want by us or need by us is to get our kids back on the island as soon as possible. So the historic building looks like it's going to be done at any solution that we have going forward right now. I'm not sure how your procurement mechanisms work, but if we spend a little bit of time working on this ILA, it would be nice if we could immediately kick off renovating that historical building and getting it to a point where potentially it could be an option next year, if not September or in the fall. Also, I know Dr. Bernier, who I respect very well. I could sound his hesitation about being able to use our library as a supplement some of our kids. I had the pleasure, I was able to walk through the library with Jeff Wagner and your SREF representative, and we feel like there's real potential there. So I'm talking to you to where if we can get that historical building done sooner rather than later, that and the library would be in combination with each other to get our kids back on the island. And it would really get us on a clear path to get our kids back on the island immediately. And I would really appreciate that. Also, I would just like to thank Dr. Bernier and his staff. It's been wonderful. It's gotten passionate sometimes in discussions, to say the least, but they've represented you very well, and I really appreciate everything today. And I know I'm not supposed to address anybody individually, but on some of the comments that were made, we have reached out to charter schools. We've reached out to FGCU. We've talked. I have talked to FWC. I've talked to the Coast Guard. We are working diligently on everything that we talked to you about. And this is the fight for our community in some of our eyes. So you're always going to get our top effort. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Monica Schmucker, and I'm a parent on Fort Myers Beach. I want to discuss just the options a little bit, and the options that make the most sense for everybody, and that is some form of B or C. I'm sure you can guess that's what I was going to say. I also want to clarify some public misconceptions. We're not asking for you to build a school for just a few kids. We're asking to be put back in a position that we were in before, and then let us improve on that position. Now, we know that you have or you will receive money from insurance, most likely FEMA grants, and there's other opportunities. And it's money that you would not have had but for the destruction of our school. So we're asking you to use it for its very purpose and put us all back in square one, like we were all, you guys and us, before the storm. And then once we're there, we can address that enrollment issue, which quite frankly should have been addressed by most of your predecessors. I think that as a community, we have shown a commitment to that. We've researched, as everyone has talked, formed committees and found realistic ways to increase enrollment. And just a few comments on the projections that we've made. These were projections that everybody has acknowledged are reasonable and realistic. When we talked about expanding the boundary, we just talked about expanding it to Summerlin, which brings in the 9 more kids, which doesn't require additional busing. We talked about expanding our waiver program, which we looked at the Sanibel School, and we see that about 40% of them were on the waiver at that date that we looked at, whatever it may have been, but it was about 40%. We did not have that, so we were looking to market in a sense or invite neighboring families the same way, and we believe that those are realistic projections. Our chamber has committed to inform workers about our school. Businesses have shown commitment to align parent schedules with the schedule with the school in Bay Oaks, and we only said 5 for workforce housing. But we came up with realistic ways to increase these enrollment that would have brought us to $8,000 to $9,000 per student, which is right on the average. So what I wanted to say was save the money on that temporary campus. We can utilize the historic building and possibly the library or other community facilities, but put the district and Fort Myers Beach back in our pre-Ian position using the money that you would have attained only because of our devastation to give us back the school so we can actually address, because we need that space in order to address the enrollment, save the county's best K through 5, and let us implement programs that Lee County schools don't have, but Collier County schools do, which we learned when we started looking into some of these magnet programs. There's some that we have the curriculum for already in place, and all we have to do is adopt it, and we can do that. So let us get back to our position, and then improve that position by giving us a building to do it in. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Karen Woodson. I'm a member of the Fort Myers Beach Town Council. I want to thank all of you on the school board for the work that you've already done in conjunction with our parents, community, and our council. Obviously, no one in the world would have thought that FMB would have been decimated by a 500-year storm. Literally, the loss of lives, homes, businesses, and our close-knit community as we knew it. Therein lies the moral obligation that concerns some of you, not just the fiduciary responsibility. Having said that, there could be a fourth option of a hybrid of options 2 and 3. As our superintendent alluded to, saving money on portables and moving forward with permanent structures. We could fit all the kids into the historic school and possibly use our library, keeping our kids on the island for their education. At the same time, work on expanding enrollment, which we have talked about. We could rebuild our community, business, chamber, and council using in all of our efforts and endeavors in partnership with our school. Thinking outside the box is an understatement, and one that is embraced and supported by not only our beach parents, but the entire community of Fort Myers Beach and the council. I ask that you move forward with positive commitment to further our beach school and rebuilding of our community. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Patrick Vanass. I came here with a list of items to discuss, and I listened to your comments, and I changed my list completely. First and foremost, I'd like to thank staff for the work they've done through the ad hoc. And the message I want to relay is, guys, we've got a great solution in option B. We have a compromise. We have something we have worked hard to find solutions on. And just within a few meetings, we have found great solutions. We saved money on portables by putting the kids in the historic building and in the library. We have looked at the demographics. We've put together a plan to increase the enrollment. Yes, it's based on assumptions, but those are reasonable assumptions. We have solutions. We can get that number up. We have also looked at that long-term commitment and sustainability of, is the district going to be on the hook forever with a school that can't get the enrollment up? And we have committed to an interlocal agreement where if we can't meet those benchmarks, we will move on to another solution. So the good news, folks, today is we have solutions. We have great options. We have solutions. But then just to address some of the comments that I've heard today, because I'm very concerned as to what those sound bites are out in the public, okay? So let's be fair when we look at statistics. I had a professor that used to say statistics are very suggestive in what they reveal, crucial in what they conceal, okay? So instead of looking at the per student in operational costs, if we look at the percentage of your entire budget for the year, the cost is only 0.08% of your entire budget. Put that out in the public and see how they feel. It's a rounding error. Also, when it comes to the cost figures that you have before you, we are using pre-Ian figures for the cost of operating the school, but post-Ian enrollment costs. Is that fair? That's what I want you guys to really look at when we look at fairness and equity. If we're going to use numbers, let's use fair numbers, because that's what the public picks up. And those are the sound bites. Maybe that's a feedback you're getting. So I would say, let's not put too much weight into those numbers. We have good solutions. We can work through those issues, and we can bring that cost down and find something that is sustainable and feasible for the long term. So thank you very much. And I can't wait to get to work on that ad hoc committee some more and develop those solutions. Thank you.
Will the following individuals please line up? Doug Hage, or Haig, I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name, Bill Beach, Lanny Holt, Dr. Charles Daly, Hamid Hunter, and Jenny Tardef Paradiso. Just wait for the timer and then you can begin. Thank you.
My name is Jenny Tardif Paradiso, and I'm a parent of a student at Fort Myers Beach Elementary. The first beach school was held at the Mayhew Page Cottage. It opened in 1937 with 27 first, second, and third graders. Parents helped the school stay open. Within a year, the student body had outgrown the cottage, and it was still standing until this past September when Hurricane Ian destroyed it. The second school was opened in 1938, a two-room schoolhouse for grades 1 through 6. The parents got together, donated labor, and raised funds to turn a tool shed on the property into a lunchroom. Prior to Ian, the building was still in use as the Fort Myers Beach Women's Club. Throughout the years, the Women's Club has participated in numerous events and is one of the top continuous donors to our school. The building was sadly leveled this past weekend. The third and current school was purchased in 44 and opened in 49 for grades 1 through 6. In 47, the parents and community came together and raised $20,000 in 9 months for the school to be air conditioned. In the 60s, she survived Hurricane Donna. The district, parents, and community worked together to get her back up and running. In the 70s, she was one of the first schools to introduce kindergarten in Lee County, mainly because there was room and the PTA funded all the furnishings for the classroom. In the early 90s, local organizations donated a marine science center that was located in the 5th grade classroom. I know this because I was one of those students in that classroom. Yes, there's a lot of rich history, and yes, there are a lot of things changing, but one thing has always remained unwavering, and that is the parental and community commitment to the school. We have been on all the Zooms, all the town halls, all the sunset therapy sessions, brainstorming on how to save our school. I'm part of the ad hoc committee, trying to come up with viable solutions to the issues that have been pointed out to us. I'm CC'd on the same emails you are. You're aware of the numerous organizations willing to invest in the future of these kids in this building. FMB is resilient. They said it would take 6 months to get water. It took us 2 weeks. They said it would take ages for electric. It took 1 month. They told us we would not be able to get our lives back, yet here we are rebuilding our lives. We're rebuilding our homes, our community, and doing our best to ensure stability for our kids. We're showing up, not giving up, and advocating for what's right. I leave it to you to decide if the zones need to be expanded. The barrier school rule needs to change. I leave it to you to make it possible for people to choose FMBE on that choice application. The magnet school approach is such a great opportunity. We've already had a marine science center there. Otsego Bay has pledged to be on board. A principal already started a STEM lab on campus. FGCU is interested in implementing their entrepreneurship program. Imagine teaching kids not to see problems as obstacles, but as opportunities. Imagine all of us seeing the situation as an opportunity. We have such wonderful resources here. Let's utilize them. I appreciate you taking the time to listen to us. Now, please help join us in saving her because she's
Good afternoon. My name is Doug Hagee, and my wife Denise is employed at Fort Myers Beach Elementary. I've had the privilege of being a volunteer, a substitute teacher, and a coach at Beach Elementary for 5 years. My professional occupation is also as a marketing strategist and consultant, and I've advised numerous clients on their site locations. I've worked with demographic data and projection data. Thank you in advance for the consideration of my perspective and my experience on 4 points. The demographic projection, I would really like to impress upon the board that we are in the land of reasonable assumptions. I believe the assumptions the ad hoc committee have put forward are sound. The underlying variables of demographic projections are scrambled. We are in the aftermath of a natural disaster. Housing stock has been devastated. No one can tell you for certainty how many females of childbearing ages will work or live on a sterile island in the next 3 years. It is an unknown. Demographic projections are not demographic certainties. You actually hold in your hands the power to influence the demographic makeup of the island. The existence of a school, the existence of an A school will affect the number of families who decide to rebuild and live again on the island, and also maybe the number of employees who go to work on an unknown expanding number of businesses on Estero Island. One statistic that I would hope we check that we're apples to apples on, and I believe at Sanibel, in K through 5 enrollment, a substantial number of students who attend that school are children of employees on the island. I want to make sure that you have the information in your hands that shows an estimated number of student attendees that would be sons or daughters of employees on the island. Very quickly, I'll shift to my emotional plea, and it is a plea. I have shadowed and been mentored by a simply wonderful group of teaching professionals at Beach Elementary. I have witnessed firsthand their impact on the educational success they achieve for their students. We are talking about an A school and an A environment. You see the measurements, you have the scores. Beyond that, it's an intimate, compassionate, and caring learning environment that I believe should be cherished, not extinguished, and be given an opportunity to grow back and grow back better. And lastly, because I see I'm on the clock, please make me one promise. Before your vote, look in the mirror. Look into your own eye, or look into your heart and ask yourself a simple question. What is the right thing to do for Beach Elementary?
Thank you, sir.
What is the right thing to do for those students? And I trust you'll come to
Thank
the
you,
right
sir.
answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for being here, and thank you for, I know this is difficult for all of you. My name is Bill Veach. I'm a member of the Fort Myers Beach Town Council and a proud member of this community. There's been a lot of talk about workforce housing, and I appreciate the comments about the town reaching out to the people who are building and have a workforce housing component. We're in the process of redoing our comprehensive plan, and even with the previous council, we've been discussing workforce housing. We have established a funding source that's currently in place for workforce housing. We are working towards one of the principal features in the conversation we're having about bonus incentives for future development is workforce housing. So there is right now, it's in the conversation, it's in the commitment. When these places get built, having additional workforce housing, there's a two-pronged benefit to that. The workers who come from off island may want to put their kids in the school, but then there's other families who may also be in the workforce housing. Most workforce housing, like the one in Sanibel, and it may affect their numbers, as they have an established workforce housing program there, is that the charge for a unit is not based on how many bedrooms unit is. It's based on the salary of a person, which means that someone who has kids pays the same rent for a 3-bedroom place, say, as someone for a 1-bedroom place. That's a family-friendly way to do housing like this. It's an important component, something the town is doing. You're talking about that FEMA is not guaranteed. The only guarantee you can get from FEMA is if you don't apply, you won't get anything. In our island right now, it's a blank slate. From the people I've talked to, the people who are leaving, there are 3 main reasons why they're leaving. One is financial. One is just anxiety. They don't want to be around for another hurricane. And another point is there's a lot of older people who just can't see spending 3 years of the latter part of their life dealing with it. Those older people are probably don't have kids. So what's going to fill their place it may be more demographically favorable to having more kids on the island. And I think that the other thing is Bay Oaks. We had plans for Bay Oaks. We almost had it built, but because of Ian, because of timing, we're essentially going back to the drawing board for our recreational center. I don't see any reason going forward that if you're building a school and we're building a rec center, that we can't model after what's done before to have a more useful shared facility that benefits both of us. There can be some cost savings through that and some other benefits. And the other thing is that I think is a very important point is uncertainty is detrimental. That I know some people who have kids that are actually moving off, preschool age kids, because they're not sure what the future is going to have for the school. So thank you very much for your consideration.
My name is Lainey Holt. I am a current teacher at the Beach School. This is my first year there. I'm going to finish Mrs. Zamniak's statement because it was too good not to. There is such an amazing opportunity here for the school district to develop the campus into a forward-thinking school of the future. Please give us the chance to continue to be a top-ranking school in our world-class school district. Please give us a school back where we can build our enrollment over the next few years and build an innovative program for the future. We as a staff have maintained our commitment to the students and families of Beach Elementary. We have been teaching on a new campus with a new commute, faced new challenges, and all while doing it in our own personal difficult circumstances and losses. Now is the time for the school board at least to approve a reestablishment of the Beach campus and an opportunity to meet enrollment thresholds. Isn't that what world-class really means? I implore you to vote to rebuild Fort Myers Beach Elementary and to give it the chance to come back as a world-class school for future decades to come. To tippy-toe or piggyback off of what she has to say, in my opinion, coming from a Leader in Me district, it's a win-win situation. This is a beach of the future. We need to build a school of the future. With attraction comes enrollment and those community connections and partnerships we've talked about. Piggybacking on relocating. As grateful as we are to have a campus, we have not been very welcome. It's like living with relatives. You kind of overstay. Teacher and staff morale is down. We are pitied when we walk into any school. You say, oh, you're from Fort Myers Beach. In the room you hear, oh. Going back to the hiring slogan, Teach by the Beach, recruitment help was committed with no action, and I appreciate that acknowledgement. These controlled open enrollment, public school parent choice, state statute 1002.312AA does provide that a parent can provide the choice to any school in any district, bar discipline for that student. Our island schools should not be compared to other island schools because we have a different footprint, unfortunately. The time it does take to get from Heights to Fort Myers Beach Elementary on a good day is about 30 minutes. I will tell you, I worked at Heights. I had a fabulous classroom there. My last year there, I had 52 students between 2 teachers. 18 of them had IEPs, 5 of them were ELLs because I was the only one certified on the grade level to do that. Happily, yes, but moving to the smaller school in the smaller environment has shown me how positive that can be for learning. Thank you.
First of all, to Superintendent Rainier, Board Chair, board members, and last but not least, to you, Ms. Teal. It is part of the policy that we should not call board members names, so I will follow that policy. But I will say to the one board member who talked about naming schools for financial reason, you're now looking through the eyes of others. God bless you. I continue to pray for your health and your strength. To the board member that asked the question or made the statement that dealt with should a person or what kind of impact did that person have in the Lehigh area? Well, let me give you a quick historical perspective. There was a time as we went through the desegregation process, which many of you, most of you were not here. Lehigh did not have many parents that lived in that particular area, as you may well know, Ms. Persons. But they were allowed to move into the area. The impact that Mr. Teal had was widespread. He touched the lives of individuals who moved to Lehigh. He inspired and motivated individuals across this county and other counties as well. When we went through the desegregation process over 40 years ago, that process included practicing the rights of others. I've heard you mention equity for a long time. But equity cannot just be practiced 40 years ago. It must be a continuous process every day. I remember Mr. Till, when he got the Golden Apple, he said, it is amazing, a little black boy from Dunbar receiving the most prestigious award as the Golden Apple. Superintendent, I saw you when the hurricane came, tears rolling down your eyes, and you said, I need to make sure that those in another community have food. I saw you. Change, you all have the opportunity to make change. Don't sit back there and not. Change, Dr. King said, how long? Not long. Make it happen. Mr. Till, don't forget him. Thank you.
Good afternoon. In our chapter, we call Brother Daly there, Brother Fire and Brimstone. Now y'all see why. Mr. Superintendent, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen of the board, Ms. Bruno, it's always good to see you. My name is Hamid Hunter, and I'm the proud polemarch of the Fort Myers Alumni Chapter of Kappa Alpha Psi. Brother Teal, Mr. Teal, was a member of our chapter and a charter member of our chapter. Mrs. Teal, Mr. Teal, it's good to see you. That's his son, Mr. Teal, over there, along with his wife. Brother Teal, I'm going to talk about some political things, but I promise to be nice. We are living in a day and age nowadays where we want to make rules and pass laws that keep people from saying things that offend others. But we want to preserve our rights to offend others. Let that sink in for a minute. As a board, I can't imagine, I can't fathom the responsibility that you all have to make decisions every day and not offend people. I don't think it's possible. So I'm going to talk a little bit about race now, but I promise not to be critical. Let that sink in for a minute. Brother Teal was raised in this community. He did something that was rare for his day and age for a black man from any community, never mind Dunbar. He left the community and went to college and graduated in the 1950s, 1960s. In 1959, he became a member of Kappa Alpha Psi. Then, unlike a lot of young black men do, he actually returned to his community and brought his education back. He also sought out a master's degree in mathematics, and as you know, became a math teacher at Fort Myers High School. Brother Teal embodies this, no matter what race you are, no matter what community you are, he embodies the spirit of commitment, the spirit of achievement. And he embodied those ideals so much that he was awarded the Golden Apple in this community. I'm not saying that you should take anything away from another school to name it after Brother Teal, but what I am saying is that by naming this new school after Brother Teal, all you are doing is commemorating those important values of achievement, of education, and of commitment to your community. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time, and have a nice day.
Mr. Chairman, that concludes public comment.
Thank you, everyone in here, for your public comments. It's truly appreciated. Now we're going to move on to the next item, which is good of the order and board comment. I will start with Ms. Juvenelli.
I know we don't have a lot of time, so I'm going to make it really quick. I'll save some of my comments for this evening, but real quick. I just want to thank everybody that came today and all the emails from Fort Myers Beach. We received them. I wanted to acknowledge that publicly. There was too many for us to really, time-wise, been working on a parade at Fort Myers, so I was a little busy. So I just want to apologize for that and just let you know that I did read them, and thank you for coming today. I just want to also, regarding the naming of the school. I highly recommend everyone to vote. I think that is going to determine the name of the school. So I highly recommend you get everyone out there to vote, and I'll be doing the same thing. Thank you. Thanks.
Ms. Patrica,
In the interest of time, I'll save my comments. Thank you.
Ms. Jordan,
I will save my comments as well. Thank you.
Mr. Persons,
Same here, but I do want to thank everybody for coming today.
Ms. Langford Fleming,
I'll save my comments. Thank you.
Ms. Morgan,
And I have no comments other than I do want to thank everybody from Fort Myers Beach who came. I do want to thank you for participating on the ad hoc committee. I do read the emails. I hear you. Thank you.
I'm going to hold my comments until tonight. Thank you again for everyone coming out. I appreciate it. Mr. Superintendent.
Nothing at this time, sir.
Ms. Dupree Bruno.
I do not have anything, sir.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Next up, we'll have a student performance tonight at 5:45, followed by our action meeting at 6 o'clock. Seeing no other business to come before the board, this meeting is adjourned at 4:09 p.m. Thank you, everyone.